It's time for the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind review for the Nintendo Switch. Oh my word! I couldn't believe what I was seeing when I first saw this trailer. If you didn't already know, I was a huge fan of the original Power Rangers when I was a kid in the 90s. The styling uniforms, the crazy fight scenes, the tubular music. It was so awesome. If you couldn't tell, I totally bought this game for 90% nostalgia, 10% for the trailer. Was this game a Mighty Morphin good time? Let's find out. The main antagonist is a space witch named Rita Repulsa. However, a different version of Rita, named Robo-Rita, sends herself through a time warp and comes back to the past when the Power Rangers are first assembled and teams up with her former self to destroy them. Oh, it's a long sentence. Okay. When you first begin, you get to decide which Power Ranger you want to be. However, the game is not really meant to be played by one person, as up to 5 people can play at once, and 6 after you've beaten it. The point is to go through each level, battling various types of putties, the foot soldiers of Rita's army, and defeating a boss at the end. All of us playing quickly notice that the game can be quite difficult for the wrong reason. It's awesome to be able to battle with every Power Ranger at the same time, but unfortunately, this makes much of each level chaotic and can be hard to keep track of your character. There's so much happening on screen that it gets overwhelming. This is especially true for the motorized levels. Whether everyone's chasing down enemies with their battle bikes or Zords, there's just too much screen pollution. Playing the game on single player mode is much cleaner, yet the game isn't as fun. Don't get me wrong, it's not boring, and you can actually see what you're doing constantly, but teamwork is the focus of the game, and battling with your buddies is overall more fun. While each ranger has a different uniform and weapon, their movesets are virtually the same, which was a disappointment. The animations of every ranger are slightly different from each other, but the combat power is the same. It would have been much more fun if each ranger had their own unique fighting style and combat power, but this would have required different techniques for every ranger, and what we got was a copy-paste moveset. It's good that there are a handful of different moves you can pull off, with each one being helpful in the right situations, but if you've played as one ranger, you've basically played them all. At the top of the screen is your health bar, along with a power gauge below it. As you continue to pummel putties, the gauge will fill up. Once it's full, you can press X to perform your special move, a large AoE that does a bunch of damage to all enemies on screen. Each ranger's special move is unique to them, but just like their normal moveset, the difference is purely cosmetic. Still looks awesome though. The special gauge can also be filled if you taunt with your character. Sometimes it was a good idea to stay in one spot and keep spamming your taunt and building up the gauge before progressing to the next area. This does have a drawback though, as at the end of each level you'll be graded on how well you did with the amount of time it took you as one of the factors. If you don't care about the rankings, take as much time as you need to build up your special attack. You can find health in garbage cans of all things, that sounds good, as well as lightning bolts to temporarily increase your speed and durability. You can also find trapped NPCs and collectibles hidden throughout each level, and some of these are actually parts you need to fix the arcade cabinets in the game's hub area. These games are quite basic and honestly not that fun, but restoring them was fun in of itself. This hub area is where you can interact with NPCs from the show and switch up which ranger you want to play as for the next level. Most of the levels are linear A to B style, however a few change things up with an on-rails approach. The best one was where you're riding on a roller coaster shooting down putties. The battle bike levels are similar, but can be a bit difficult due to having to move around obstacles while targeting enemies. The graphics look great. You can actually change the visual style in the options, which I thought was pretty neat. We didn't experience any slowdown, even with 5 of us playing at the same time. However, as mentioned before, sometimes things got too chaotic and it was difficult to keep track of your character. This is one of the rare games where I prefer to play with the Joy-Con instead of my Pro Controller. For this type of game, I found it better to use the D-pad instead of the analog sticks, but having 4 separate directional buttons on the Joy-Con instead of a dedicated D-pad makes it easier to move your character around, and this is especially true when the movesets are based on your directional input. It's definitely possible and not a huge hindrance to play with the Pro Controller, but like Crypto the Necrodancer, playing with the Joy-Con is better. The music is awesome! Every level blasts your ears with hard rock rhythms and riffs. The boss fights were a mixed bag. The normal fights, if you will, is just a survival match that is much more difficult if you're by yourself. With others, it's a bit too easy. Not bad, but many times the boss kept attacking me when I was trying to get up and it felt like a one-sided battle. Depending on the difficulty settings, dying to a boss doesn't mean the end, as you have multiple lives, and this goes for every level as well. The other type of boss fights were when you were trying to destroy Rita's power generators with your individual Zords, but then there are the Megazord battles. This takes a first-person approach and has you punching the enemy when up close, but you first have to dodge their attacks to do so. If you're playing with others, you each get to take turns dodging and beating up the baddie. If you can fill up the power gauge all the way, a final strike with the power sword will leave you victorious. These battles were okay, but I guess I was hoping for a 2D fighting style brawl. At the time of this video, online play isn't yet available on Switch, but the developers say this will be released soon. It'll be cool to battle alongside others online, but my guess is players will still suffer from the abundant screen clutter. Rita's Rewind is pretty much a must-have for millennials who grew up with the OG Power Rangers in the 90s. For everyone else though, it's not going to hit as hard. While being able to mow down enemies with all your friends to awesome hard rock riffs is great fun, objectively, it misses the mark in some areas. Having each ranger play basically the same was somewhat disappointing. If the movesets are going to be the same, it would have been good to better incorporate each ranger's weapons to add to the overall flair. It would have also been really nice to be able to switch out rangers on command, especially if you're playing alone. Teaming up with friends is more fun than battling alone, and it's overall a good brawler that needs a few tweaks to become mighty. This game gets a 3.75 out of 5 with the title of
Morphitudinous.